Welcome to Quality Content QC. Get ready for insightful discussions, entertaining reviews, and more. This video is about Jeffrey Dahmer. It was a humid July day in 1991 when Milwaukee police made a discovery that would chill the city to its core. Picture, if you will, an unassuming apartment complex in the heart of Milwaukee. It's the kind of place where you'd expect to find everyday people going about their lives. But behind one of these doors, a horrific secret lay hidden. What the police would uncover in apartment 213 would shatter any sense of normalcy and catapult Milwaukee into the national spotlight. The apartment belonged to Jeffrey Dahmer. As officers stepped into his living space, an immediate, overwhelming stench hit them, a stench that would soon be recognized as the smell of death. The apartment was cluttered, chaotic, a reflection of the mind of its inhabitant. But it was what lay in the bedroom and the kitchen that truly horrified the officers. There, they found Polaroids of dismembered bodies, evidence of unspeakable acts. They found human remains so grotesquely manipulated that it was hard to believe they were dealing with a fellow human being. There were skulls in the refrigerator and a barrel filled with a corrosive solution designed to dissolve flesh and bones. As word spread of the shocking discovery, a media frenzy descended upon Milwaukee. Reporters from around the world flocked to the city, their headlines screaming of the gruesome findings. The public was horrified, left reeling and grappling with a sense of disbelief. How could such monstrosity exist in their midst? How could they have been so blind to the terror lurking behind the door of apartment 213? This grisly scene marked the end of Jeffrey Dahmer's reign of terror, but it was just the beginning of a journey into the mind of a serial killer. Over the coming weeks, as investigators pieced together the extent of Dahmer's heinous acts, the world would come to know the true depth of his depravity. And we, like them, will attempt to understand the chilling world of one of America's most notorious serial killers. Born on May 21, 1960, Jeffrey Dahmer's early life in Milwaukee, Wisconsin was seemingly unremarkable. His childhood was that of an average Midwestern boy, the firstborn son of Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. Lionel, a research chemist, and Joyce, a teletypist, provided a middle-class upbringing. However, beneath this veneer of normalcy, unsettling dynamics were at play. Family life was tense. Lionel's demanding job often kept him away from home, while Joyce struggled with mental health issues. Their marital discord cast a shadow over Dahmer's formative years. This familial turbulence might not have caused Dahmer's later atrocities, but it certainly didn't provide the stability a young child needed. As Dahmer grew older, he began to display early signs of the macabre interest that would later fuel his heinous acts. His fascination with death and dissection emerged around the age of 4, when he was intrigued by the bones of small animals. This fascination soon evolved into a morbid curiosity about the insides of these creatures, leading him to collect roadkill for dissection at home. This morbid interest was more than just child's play. It signified a deeper issue, a lack of empathy and understanding of the sanctity of life. Dahmer's parents, preoccupied with their own struggles, failed to recognize these warning signs. Isolation and alienation defined Dahmer's adolescence. He was a loner, struggling to fit in. His classmates perceived him as an oddball, further pushing him to the fringes. This isolation intensified his disturbing interests, providing a breeding ground for his dark fantasies. At home, his parents' relationship continued to deteriorate, ending in divorce when Dahmer was 18. This event seemed to be a tipping point, leaving him alone with his dark thoughts and escalating his descent into the world of crime. These early years set a dark stage for the horrifying acts that would later define Dahmer's life. His story is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most horrifying monsters are those who live among us, hidden behind a facade of normalcy. As Dahmer transitioned into adulthood, his fascination with death turned into something far more sinister. In the summer of 1978, Dahmer committed his first murder. The 18-year-old's victim was a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. The act marked the beginning of Dahmer's descent into the abyss of the unthinkable. A sinister pattern emerged, one that would become chillingly familiar over the next decade. Dahmer didn't just murder his victims, he dismembered them, his actions driven by a morbid fascination that had taken a deadly turn. Yet, This first act of violence didn't immediately lead to a killing spree. Instead, Dahmer found himself wrestling with a different demon: alcoholism. It was as if he sought to drown the monstrous urges within him, to numb himself to the horror of his own actions. His drinking problem became so severe that it led to his discharge from the army in 1981, further isolating him from society. But the alcohol didn't silence the darkness within Dahmer. Instead, it seemed to feed it. His violent tendencies began to escalate. He found himself drawn to graveyards in the dead of night, driven by a perverse curiosity. His experiments grew bolder, his actions more horrifying, as he sought to understand and control death, to possess it completely. His social isolation deepened. He moved into his grandmother's house, where he had the privacy to indulge his dark fantasies. His world became one filled with shadows and secrets, where the line between life and death blurred into insignificance. The monster within Dahmer was no longer content with merely observing death. It craved more. It hungered for control, for possession, for the perverse pleasure derived from the ultimate violation of another human being. And Dahmer, unable to resist these dark urges, gave in. Unable to combat his dark urges, Dahmer descended into a world of horrific violence and depravity. From the late 1970s to the early 1990s, Dahmer's killing spree left a trail of victims, predominantly in the Milwaukee area. This period marked a chilling chapter in American crime history, etching Jeffrey Dahmer's name into the annals of the most notorious serial killers. Dahmer had a chillingly methodical approach to his crimes. He would frequent local bars and shopping malls, seeking out young men who were often marginalized or isolated. Using his charm and the offer of money or alcohol, he would lure them back to his apartment. There, he would drug them, rendering them unconscious before committing his gruesome acts. His crimes were not just acts of murder, they were ritualistic, involving dismemberment and even cannibalism. It's a chilling thought that such acts of barbarity were committed not in some distant lawless land, but right here, in the heart of Milwaukee. Dahmer would then meticulously clean his apartment, disposing of his victims' remains with such precision that for years his horrific secret remained undiscovered. He would photograph his victims at various stages of his horrific ritual, keeping these photos hidden away as a grim trophy of his deeds. The sheer terror his actions instilled in the local community is hard to overstate. As the number of missing persons grew, so did the pervasive sense of fear. Parents would warn their children to be cautious of strangers. Friends would make sure to never leave each other alone at bars or parties. The entire city was on edge, with every new disappearance echoing the chilling question: who would be next? In the midst of this terror, Dahmer coolly continued his horrifying spree. He moved through the city like a phantom, his face unknown, his actions unsuspected. His ability to blend into the community, to appear as just another face in the crowd, made his crimes all the more terrifying. Yet beneath the surface, Dahmer was far from ordinary. He was a man driven by dark compulsions, his mind a twisted labyrinth of gruesome fantasies. His actions were not those of a man, but of a monster, one who preyed upon the most vulnerable among us. The true extent of Dahmer's crimes may never be known. His victims were often from marginalized communities, their disappearances initially overlooked or dismissed. Yet each one was a life cut tragically short, a person whose existence was brutally extinguished by Dahmer's inhuman acts. Dahmer's reign of terror held Milwaukee in a grip of fear, with each new victim adding to the mounting horror. His killing spree serves as a stark reminder of the depths of depravity to which a human being can sink, and of the unspeakable horrors that can lurk beneath the most ordinary of exteriors. As investigators pieced together Dahmer's gruesome acts, psychologists attempted to understand the man behind the monster. Jeffrey Dahmer's psychological profile is as complex as it is chilling, a tangled web of deviant tendencies, control obsessions, and deep-rooted psychological issues. One of the most striking aspects of Dahmer's psychological profile is his necrophilic tendencies. Necrophilia, the sexual attraction to corpses, is a rare and deeply disturbing paraphilia. It's a dark corner of the human psyche that most of us would rather not delve into, yet it was a reality for Dahmer. His desire for lifeless bodies was so strong that it drove him to commit unthinkable acts of violence. But why the attraction to the lifeless? Psychologists believed that for Dahmer, it was about control. Dahmer's life was marked by a lack of control, from his tumultuous childhood to his struggle with his sexual identity. His victims, once lifeless, could not reject him, could not leave him. They were entirely under his control. This warped sense of power was a twisted comfort to Dahmer, a way to assert dominance in a world where he felt powerless. Dahmer's desire for control extended beyond his victims' deaths. He would often photograph his victims at various stages of his horrific process, a morbid memento of his control over their fate. These photographs served as a stark reminder of his power, a power he exerted through the most gruesome means imaginable. His violent acts were also fueled by a deep-seated anger. Dahmer was known to have a short temper, a characteristic that only amplified his violent tendencies. His anger, combined with his necrophilic tendencies and obsession with control, created a lethal cocktail of psychological issues that led him down a path of murder and mayhem. However, it's essential to note that Dahmer's psychological profile is not an excuse for his actions, but rather an attempt to understand the factors that contributed to his violent behavior. Dahmer was a man consumed by his darkest desires, his mind a battleground of deviant tendencies and violent impulses. Understanding his psychological profile helps us better comprehend the depths of human depravity, shedding light on a side of human nature we'd rather ignore. In the end, Dahmer's psychological profile paints a chilling picture of a man trapped in his own twisted reality, a reality marked by death, control, and a perverse pleasure in the macabre. It's a sobering reminder of the depths to which the human mind can sink when consumed by its darkest desires. Dahmer's psychological profile provided a chilling glimpse into the mind of a man consumed by his darkest desires. A man who, in his quest for control and satisfaction of his deviant desires, became one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. On February 15, 1992, Jeffrey Dahmer was convicted of 15 murders, marking the end of a horrifying chapter in American crime history. This was the moment when the world let out a collective sigh of relief, knowing that the man behind the monstrous acts was finally behind bars. Dahmer's trial was nothing short of a media circus. The gruesome details of his confessions drew national attention, with the public grappling to comprehend the extent of his heinous crimes. Dahmer, however, remained eerily calm throughout the proceedings, showing little remorse for his actions. He pled guilty but insane to the charges, detailing his gruesome acts with a chilling detachment that sent shivers down the spine of everyone present in the courtroom. His confession was an unnerving account of his dark descent into madness. He spoke of his loneliness, his twisted fantasies, and his attempts to create submissive, zombie-like companions to ward off his feelings of isolation. His words painted a horrifying picture of a man lost in his own world, a world filled with fear, obsession, and a complete disregard for human life. The trial culminated in Dahmer being sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, a total of 945 years in prison. Yet, the enormity of his sentence did little to quell the public's outrage. Many felt that justice had not been served, that Dahmer's punishment was merely a drop in the ocean compared to the ocean of pain he had inflicted on his victims and their families. While Dahmer languished in prison, the aftermath of his crimes continued to ripple through the wider community. The families of his victims grappled with their loss, their grief magnified by the horrific manner in which their loved ones had met their end. The sense of betrayal was profound, as Dahmer had often lured his victims under the pretense of friendship, only to brutally betray their trust in the most unimaginable way. In the wider community, Dahmer's crimes sparked a wave of fear and mistrust. His ability to blend into society, to appear as just another face in the crowd, served as a chilling reminder that monsters often lurk where we least expect them. His case prompted a re-evaluation of how society deals with mental health issues and the potential dangers of ignoring signs of psychological distress. Dahmer's life in prison was cut short when he was beaten to death by a fellow inmate in November 1994, just 2 years into his sentence. His death, however, did little to erase the memory of his horrifying crimes. Jeffrey Dahmer's reign of terror may have ended, but the scars left by his horrific crimes remain, a chilling reminder of the darkest corners of the human mind. Even after decades, his story continues to haunt us, a stark reminder of the depths of depravity to which a human being can sink, serving as a grim testament to the horrific potential of unchecked mental illness. Thank you for being part of the Quality Content QC community. Until next time, stay curious.